This podcast is brought to you by ShortsTV and is not affiliated with the Oscars or the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in any way.
Hi, and welcome to the ShortsTV podcast. I'm Carter Pilcher, and I'm joined by the lovely Rasha Goel. Rasha?
Hi, it's great to be here, and what an exciting day. The Oscar nominations have come out.
Yep, exactly, and let's get right down to it. The first film, Rasha, is Burrow by Madeline Shafarian and Michael Caparat. A young rabbit embarks on a journey to dig the burrow of her dreams, despite not having a clue what she's doing. Rather than reveal to her neighbors her imperfections, she digs herself deeper and deeper into trouble. Madeline is a very accomplished animator, having worked on Coco, and she's one of the youngest animation directors at only 28 years old.
And next up is Genius Loci by Adrian Marigo and Amari Ovis. So one night, Rain, a young loner, sees the urban chaos as a mystical oneness that seems alive, like some sort of guide. Now, what's interesting about this film is that it was a contender at Annecy, which is a very renowned film festival, especially for animation, and this was written and directed by one female director.
The next animated nominee is If Anything Happens, I Love You by Will McCormick and Michael Gouvier. In this animated short, we're taken on an extraordinary emotional journey of two parents struggling to overcome the hurt left by a tragic event that leaves their family changed forever. It was exec produced by Laura Dern, who won an Oscar herself just last year.
And then we've got Opera by Eric O. This is a story that depicts our society and history, which is filled with beauty and absurdity. You know, what's interesting is Eric actually had worked on Finding Dory. He's from the Pixar family, and he's been a supervising animator for The Dam Keeper, which was also nominated in 2014. And currently, he has an animation poetry series on Instagram.
The next film up, the final animated short film nominee, is Yes People from Iceland, and it was directed and produced by Gisli Dari Haraldsson and Arnar Gunnarsson. The film tells the story of one morning when an eclectic mix of people face the everyday battles such as work, school, and dishwashing. As the day progresses, their relationships are tested and ultimately their capacity to cope. Interestingly, the composer of this film was also nominated today for writing Husavik for the film Eurovision. His name, Atli Orvason.
How fun is that? You know, looking at all these films, it's quite a diverse compilation.
Rasha, one of the things that stood out to me is just the different animation styles. You have 2D animation from Pixar. You have some very beautiful artistic animation styles in Genius Loci. And Opera is a very experimental, almost an installation kind of film. Anything Happens, I Love You, beautiful style, but definite, more traditional way of storytelling. And then Yes People, of course, traditional, but designed to make you laugh.
Well, let's move on to the best live action short films. First one up is Feeling Through by Doug Rowland and Susan Rosensky. We had spoken to Doug, so it's quite exciting to see his film land here. The story is a late night encounter on a New York City street that leads to a profound connection between a teen in need and a deaf-blind man.
You never seen a blind and deaf guy before?
And, you know, here's a fun fact about this film. It was so appreciated by Cher that she tweeted about it.
And that's quite a big tweet, I have to say. But the next film is also one of interest, called The Letter Room, directed by Elvira Lynn, produced by Sophia Sundervan. The story is of a corrections officer in a prison. When he's transferred to the letter room, he soon finds himself enmeshed in a prisoner's deeply private life.
All correspondence to and from inmates is filtered through you.
Interestingly, this film, produced during lockdown also, was done by a husband-wife team. The director's husband was coerced or recruited to star in the film. His name is Oscar Isaac. So that's one way to get a big Hollywood movie star into your movie, is marry him.
Not a bad way. And next up is The Present by Farah Nabulsi, someone we also spoke to. And this story is about a wedding anniversary, and a character named Yusuf and his young daughter set out in the West Bank to buy his wife a gift. Now, this is a different journey because between soldiers, segregated roads, and checkpoints, you wonder how easy will it be to go shopping.
My house is just there.
Farah is a first-time filmmaker, and she is from the Middle East. So it's great to see that there's representation happening from that side of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of representation, the next film is Two Distant Strangers. It was the nominees for the film are Trayvon Free and Martin Desmond Rowe, which tells the story of cartoonist Carter James' repeated attempts, great name, by the way, for the main character, his repeated attempts to get home to his dog, which are thwarted by a recurring deadly encounter that forces him to relive the same awful day over and over again.
One way or another, I'm getting home to my dog.
Interesting fact here, Martin Desmond Rowe nominated before for his work on a short film called Bushkazi Boys, and Trayvon was Emmy nominated and worked on The Daily Show.
And then we've got Wide Eye by Tomer Shushan and Shira Hochman. A man finds his stolen bicycle, which now belongs to a stranger. While attempting to retrieve it, he struggles to remain human. I feel like this is a story that some people can relate to, and we've seen this happen here in real life. And you know what's interesting about this film is that it was done in one take.
And that is kind of an extraordinary process of filmmaking. When you watch the movie, and I think our audiences will be very excited to see this one, the technique is absolutely phenomenal. 18 minutes, one take.
Wow.
Rasha, as you look at this category, one thing that stood out to me that was interesting is that two of the films are from the Middle East, one from Israel, one from Palestine. It's a very, very interesting mix. We had met, as you know earlier, we had talked to Hani Abu Assad, one of the big directors from the Middle East. And I think it can only be indicative of the state of filmmaking there that 2 of the 5 live-action nominees are from the Middle East.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about you?
Well, Carter, I agree with you on that. Plus, I think when we look at these films in this category, I feel that several themes came out of the pandemic, and we see them being reflected here within this category. And you really do touch upon the humanity aspect that exists all across the world, and just what people are going through, what they're experiencing, and where we really are at in the world.
So there's some amazing films and interesting subjects that are being touched upon. Well, should we go to the documentaries?
Yes.
First up in that category is Colette by Anthony Giacchino and Alice Doyard. In Colette, a former French resistance member refused to step foot in Germany. She was 74 years old, but all of that changed when a young history student named Lucy entered her life and convinced her to visit the concentration camp where the Nazis killed her brother.
Écoute, t'entends les oiseaux qui chantent?
This film was also made by Guardian Docs, a newspaper here in the United Kingdom.
And Carter, next we have A Concerto is a Conversation by Ben Proudfoot and Chris Bowers. The story is about a virtuoso jazz pianist and film composer who tracks his family's lineage through his 91-year-old grandfather from Jim Crow, Florida to the Walt Disney Concert Hall.
I wanted to spend some more time with him and talk to him about his life, about our family.
Quite an intriguing story. And what is so neat here is Chris Bowers, at the age of 29, scored the Oscar-winning film Green Book. And he's also currently scored this series on Netflix titled When They See Us.
In this next film, Do Not Split, by Anders Hammer and Charlotte Cook, it takes place in 2019 in Hong Kong, which was rocked by the largest protest since Britain handed back Hong Kong to the Chinese in 1997. This is the story of the protests, told through a series of demonstrations by local protesters that escalate into conflict when highly armed police appear on the scene. Interesting fact, Anders Hammer is a veteran filmmaker on refugee films and has won a One World Media Award for Best Refugee Reporting in 2018. So this has got to be a very interesting movie.
And then we've got Hunger Word by Sky Fitzgerald and Michael Schuerman. This was filmed from inside two of the most active therapeutic feeding centers in Yemen. Hunger Word documents two female healthcare workers fighting to thwart the spread of starvation against the backdrop of a forgotten war.
Half of the country's health facilities are shut. Patients and staff are often unable to reach clinics because of the heavy fighting and the airstrikes.
And Sky Fitzgerald, some may also remember, also directed Lifeboat in 2019.
And then the last film in this category, A Love Song for Latasha by Sophia Nali Allison and Janice Dunca. The film tells the story of the injustice surrounding the shooting and death of 15-year-old Latasha Harlins at a South Central Los Angeles store, which became a flashpoint for the city's 1992 civil uprising.
People don't know who she was as an individual. They don't know.
It's an experimental film. She shot it on her own and used different techniques to tell the story.
You know what's so interesting about this category is I think the audience will have exposure to global stories. We see so many stories, not just from the United States, but from across the world.
Well, that is one of the things that's interesting about the doc category always, is that you get an amazing issue in a different part of the world that you really don't see on the news very much. You know, here we have China and Yemen and Los Angeles and Germany and France. It's a 115-minute long movie with all of them put together. I think it will be a very exciting theatrical release this year.
Yeah, I agree. We'll all leave having learned something.
Exactly.
Well, that's it, everyone, for our episode this week on the Oscar nominations. We are so happy and excited for all the nominees and excited to share their work with all of you through ShortsTV.
Thank you so much, Rasha, and thank you everyone for listening. And be sure to download the podcast and get ready for the Oscar Shorts, which are coming to theaters on the 2nd of April.